What's up, guys? I'm Zinga Harris with the Coalition for Liberty, and I have with me today Tammy Weitzman. She has been discriminated against at her workplace for several years, actually, which is a shame. And we want to talk about her story straight from the horse's mouth. Tammy, thank you so much for coming on and sharing what happened to you.
Thanks for having me, Zinga.
Tammy, can you explain your work background and why you decided to kind of take that path in the first place?
Yeah, so thanks for having me on.
Yeah.
At a very early age, the age of 5, I lost my father to cancer. My family was impacted by this. And throughout my schooling, I knew pretty early on that I wanted to get into oncology and become an oncology social worker.
Okay. Um, and so you have this incredible, in the worst way possible, story, working in Seattle, and you were working at Seattle Cancer Care Alliance.
Correct. Now known as the Fred Hutch Cancer Center. Correct.
Okay, can you give us like kind of like a brief story of, for first of all, how long you worked there, and then kind of what happened while you were there?
So I worked there for 5 years, and I would say 4 out of those 5 years became very difficult for me. I felt I was I was harassed, and it was a very difficult time for me in my career.
Okay, so you say you're harassed. What does that mean in detail? Can you tell us a couple of stories or incidents, rather?
Yes, I can tell you several stories of discrimination and harassment that
Mm-hmm.
I experienced and that I faced. On one occasion, I was called by two colleagues an insensitive Canadian white. I was also called a white, which is a derogatory term for a Jew.
Mm-hmm.
Several months after those episodes, I was harassed once again because I had known and still know a high ranking official, cabinet member in the Trump administration at the time. And I knew him because I was involved in the care of his daughter, one of his family members, cancer treatment. And the family, years later, continued to keep in contact with me. So I was sent unsolicited emails on company email by a physician, and they were disparaging of this person. I was also on a weekly, if not daily basis, by another physician. I was spoken to, in a pretty disparaging manner around this official,
Right.
and she was not the physician was not complimentary of him, but it was constant. It was in the clinic, and it was fairly consistent messaging.
Mm-hmm. So we've got the name calling, we've got the harassment over your friend. Um, were you able to go up to your bosses or HR and talk about it and try to come to
Yeah.
some kind of resolution or?
Yeah, so as far as the name calling went, I absolutely did go to my manager. We had a meeting about it uh, together with my colleague. To my knowledge, nothing was done to my colleague. However, I was directed to take a diversity training, and indeed, I had to do that for 2 full days. I had to take diversity training or retraining. There
Uh,
was another, yeah, sorry.
Before we go on to another example, uh, with the name calling and the harassment because of who you were friends with, were you able to go to HR or a boss about that and explain what was going on?
Yeah, so the name calling about being an insensitive Canadian white bitch and all that, I did. I had a meeting with my boss
Hmm.
and with my manager, and actually one of the employees who said that
Okay.
And all she responded was, well, you just weren't meant to hear that. So there was no reprimand that I'm aware of. And I was just told to, continue on. As far as the harassment with the physicians, I, the emails, the unsolicited emails
Right.
and all that, I actually called HR to see what, if anything, could be done because it was distressing to me. It was beginning to grate on me.
Mm-hmm.
And they said that they could contact the medical director's office. They could do something about it, but it would end up causing me a lot of discomfort in my environment and in my practice. And I would ultimately be retaliated against.
Wow.
They could do that, or I could just manage it on my own. Um,
Okay.
so that was the messaging that I received consistently. One of the last DEI trainings that I was part of, I think it was the last one, immediately thereafter, a social work colleague of mine sent out to the group a resource. And she said, I'm going to send out an article around how to talk to patients about racism and how to confront them on this issue.
Cancer
And I just
patients.
want to, my patients, correct. And I do want to read to you
Mm-hmm.
the title of the article.
Okay.
The title of the article is How We Are to Use Our Skills and Influence to Resist the Upcoming Trump Administration and the Hatred and Violence that it inspires. So this was obviously an article that was written earlier.
Mm-hmm.
And she used her work email to send all of us this article. And I was just stunned and
Right.
shocked. And I immediately called my manager and told her that I did not feel that this was inappropriate to send over email. I felt that this was quite disparaging, and she disagreed, but she could sense that I was very upset about it. And she directed me to talk to this colleague to let her know how upset I was about it because my feelings would fester otherwise. So
It's awkward.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
well, even more so, I was really frightened because this colleague was a noted progressive
Mm-hmm.
social justice warrior, and I really felt that it was my manager's job to talk to the colleague
Right.
because I did not feel it was appropriate. So I followed directions. I called my colleague. We spoke. She certainly disagreed with my stance and my opinion. But in the end, I asked her and I told her, I just hope that this won't impair our working relationship. And she said,
Mm-hmm.
absolutely not. And we moved on from there. So again, I was left to hold it kind of on my own.
Okay. Was there any retaliation or because that's what I think it was HR told you last time, that there could be retaliation.
Well, yes, certainly there was retaliation. I was terminated. And what happened a week after that phone conversation, I received a very lengthy email from this colleague of mine. And I'd like to read the
Yes,
excerpt, if,
please
if, if
do.
I may. This is
Mm-hmm.
just a small excerpt of a 3-page email that she sent me, copied my entire leadership and human resources on. It is the essence of white privilege to be able to focus on a tree at the expense of seeing the forest. It is the essence of white fragility to claim victimhood when you are definitely not the victim. I'm disturbed that a white woman on a social work team at a major institution like SCCA would try to play these games and would claim the status of victimhood in the face of a woman of color after the many years of the era of Trump. She then went on and explained, I will not privilege you, meaning me, Tammy, or any white person's perspective or opinion. So that was just a
Whoa.
very small excerpt. It
Mm-hmm.
it went on for an additional 2.5 pages.
Right.
Mhm.
And then after that, you were terminated.
So about 1 week after that, I was called into a conference room by my manager, and her manager was with her, and I was terminated. I was told your ethnicity sensitivity does not align with our core values. So we're just going to cut to the chase essentially and let you go. And then I was asked if I had a ride home.
Wow. Do you think that was a retaliation, your termination?
Absolutely, 100% it was.
And so, on a personal level, how did all of this, I mean, this is 4 years of back to back harassment on different levels. How did this all affect you?
Yeah, it was extremely difficult. And I worked in an environment that was a very pressured environment. I was anxious a
Hmm.
lot. I had to take an FMLA at one point and seek medical care and take medication
Hmm.
for anxiety and there was actually one instance where I was called in to talk to my manager about some claims. And I was so nervous and so scared that I ended up having to lay on the ground because I was close to fainting. And she
Mm.
had to contact our rapid response system in the hospital, which sends nurses and PAs and
Hmm.
doctors to assess you. And a nurse came in and assessed me. And I was assessed. And, by the time I was feeling a little better, I just got up and right back to work.
Right.
So it took a lot out of me emotionally, psychologically,
Hmm.
physically.
So you've been gone, and there could be some people who are maybe not sympathetic to your story, that would say, well, it's over. So why are you telling your story? Like, what is your fight? Why are you doing this now? So what would your
Well,
response be?
yeah, well, I was canceled and my dream was taken away from me. I'd been a pure oncology social worker for 22 years. I dedicated my life to this work. And because they didn't like what I said, I feel I was terminated.
Hmm.
This environment put progressive politics in front of patient care, in front of sensitivity to who I was as a person. Now, they may claim differently, but that's not what happened.
Right.
I had stood alone for several years, and it wasn't until I found the Coalition for Liberty that I felt embraced, that I felt validated, most of all, that I felt heard.
Hmm.
And I want to go ahead and hold them accountable for what they did to me. This has affected me financially. This has affected me emotionally. I no longer work exclusively with cancer patients anymore. And I don't want this to happen to others like me.
Yeah. That's
So
the
I feel that it's my duty to speak out about what happened to me.
good, and I'm glad you are. There's a lack of bravery in this country, and so for you to be this vulnerable and tell your story is uh is courageous. And I'm so glad that the Coalition for Liberty was there to help you, um, to get you some representation. And I hope you do get justice. And to the audience, this is what Coalition for Liberty is all about. We are the sword and shield for freedom of speech. There is a group of people that are trying to take freedom of speech away depending on your immutable characteristics, like what you look like and your ethnicity. And then if you add on your politics on top of that, you've got extra knives coming at you. And so Tammy has experienced that firsthand. But the thing is she's not the only one. There's lots of people who are going through these DEI trainings. There's lots of people who hope to keep their politics hidden so that their coworkers don't find out because they know the consequences for those things. And so if you want to donate to Tammy's legal fund, there's going to be a link in the description below. And there's also going to be a QR code that pops up on your screen. So if you're on your PC or your Mac, go ahead and check out that QR code, because we want to make sure that Tammy gets justice, and not just Tammy, but others, because the Coalition for Liberty is here to hopefully protect and represent a lot of everyday Americans. Tammy, thank you so much for telling your story and getting it out there. More people need to hear about it, and hopefully it'll embolden more people to not put up with this stuff anymore. Thank you very much.
You think